And I've started sharing my screen. Yes, can you see where? Can you see my screen, guys? Yes, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Let me just open up JavaScript course that we were talking about. So last class we had spoken about the JavaScript objects, like how many, like what are objects and how can you access them and all of that. So like quickly, I'm going to just do a small recap of that. All right. So let me do this. First of all, I will launch the app, and that is by doing just clicking on go live here.
सर जावास्क्रिप्ट खत्म होने में कितना
हाँ,
टाइम लगेगा और
JavaScript से depends on number of classes we have. तो अभी के लिए मुझे सिर्फ एक Thursday और Friday मिला है, but going forward, if I get even weekends also, we should be able to finish it off in the next 1 month.
ओके ओके। और
मुझे
सर
weekend का
रिएक्ट के
मिला
लिए
है तो React का again let's say React का 1.5 month maximum हो जाएगा.
ओके ओके।
Actually, see, JavaScript is like really big. JavaScript में बहुत से topics है. It's impossible to finish all of them in 1 month. But I'm going to cover all the important ones, which is enough for you to get started with React. React, maybe I'll cover all the basic, intermediate, and advanced stuff as well. It will be enough for you to build any kind of applications. Okay, so
okay.
yeah, we'll try to finish JavaScript in the next 1 month or maximum 1.5 months, and then React also 1.5 months उसके बाद.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So here, if we inspect, if we go to console, we have this here. So if I try to do a console.log of hello world, I should be able to see the result here. All right. So like I was saying, we create objects by doing, let's say, we create a user object. And this will be like this. We can have an ID, we can have a name. We can even have location. And you can have a Boolean value as well. Basically, the keys, I mean, the values for your objects. Oh, okay, but before that, an object is basically a collection of key value pairs where every key has a corresponding value associated with it. Value can be anything. Value can be a number, it can be a string, it can be a Boolean, and it can be anything else as well. All right. The way we access an object property is by using two ways. First, by using dot notation. Dot notation is if you do like user dot ID. Okay, this will give you this value. And one important thing to remember here is all the keys that are there within the object, they're converted to strings by JavaScript. Even though you're not doing this, right? Okay. By the way, you can do this. This is also legal and valid code for a JavaScript object, but you don't need to do it. It's not mandatory to add the codes around these things. But behind the scenes, JavaScript, it converts this all the keys will be converted to strings. Okay. The way we access the ID of the user is by using user.id. Okay, and we get the ID here. The same thing we can do to access the name and the location and the ESPAN property as well. We get all of these values here. Okay, this is one way to access by using dot notation. The other one is by using a square bracket notation. Square bracket notation. Let's say I have a variable called key, which equals one of these keys. Okay, this key variable can contain one of these keys. Let's say it contains the key called ID. I can use this key to basically access the property like this. Console.log user of key. I'll get one here. Let me just this console. I'll comment all of this out. I get one here. this is nothing but this. Both of these are exactly the same, which means within the square brackets, JavaScript expects us to provide a string here. Okay. Now this key itself is a string. That's why both of these are exactly the same. There's no difference between both of them. Let's change this to, let's say, a name here. You get the name property here. If we change this to, let's say, is married, we get is married value here. Now, one more important thing is if you try to access a property which does not exist within the object, we always get back undefined. Let's say, for example, so accessing properties that don't exist in the object. Okay, let's say I'm trying to access this user dot city, which does not exist. We always get back undefined here to see. And if I try to access again, if I try to access user dot what is the country, which does not exist, we get back undefined. Okay, that is what the objects are all about. So, any questions here, guys? Up to this?
No, sir.
Okay. Now let's say, how do I update or add new properties to an object? By the way, guys, I mean, I know you guys have been working with Python as well. In Python, you have dictionaries, right? So the objects in JavaScript are nothing but dictionaries in Python. So most of the stuff that you've learned in Python can be applied here as well. Okay, now how do you add or update the properties within the object? First, it's about updating the properties. Updating properties in an object. Like, let's say I want to change the name from this to something else. Now, see, we know that we if you want to access the property, we just do user.name. That's how we access the property. But if you want to change the property value, you can just put a new value here by saying like this. Okay. What this will do is you're assigning a new value itself to an existing property. So user.name exists and it's changing the property to this one. And now try to console log of the user object, we get back this object which has the new name here. This is the new name. Okay, let's try to change the value of ID also. Let's say user.id will be now 10 or 100. And let's say the user.location will now be like this. And I'll say user.isMarried is equal to true. So I'm changing every single property with new object, which is possible, by the way. Once you create an object here, does not mean that you can't change the values. You can definitely change all the values if you want to. So after this, if you just try to do console.log of user, we get back this object, which has all of these properties with updated values. So 100 is up. So we change it to 1 to 100. We changed is married from false to true. We've changed these both values as well. Okay, this is how you update the object's values. Now, how do you add new properties within the object? There's no difference basically. Let's say you want to add a new property called city here. So you just do user.city is equal to give a value you want. The value will be whatever you want. Okay, what this will do is it will actually add the new property here. What's happening here is, see, let's talk about, let's say, these both. I'll just remove all of these. Okay, observe that, see, the name property exists within the object. Hence, what JavaScript will do is it will just replace this value with this new value because the name already exists within the object. But in case the property does not exist within the object, JavaScript will first create that property within the object, and then it will add this value, whatever you provide here. Okay, so there are two variations here. This is updating, and this is adding. This is updating because the name property already exists within the object. So you're just changing the value of the name property. But here what happens is because the city property does not exist within this object, JavaScript will first create a key with this city key, and then it will add this value as the value for that key. Okay, so this is how you update the value, and this is how you add the value. Okay, very simple. Now, one more thing is it's very common to actually mix both arrays and objects. It's very, very common. Let me give you an example. So let's say I'm going to create a student object here, and he has the first name. Let's say it's David, and the second and the last name would be maybe Jones. And this guy, he has some strengths. Well, let's say hobbies. Okay, what are his hobbies? So hobbies can actually see, because the student can have multiple hobbies, it makes absolute sense to make this property an array, right? If I can give an array here, and I'll say the strengths are music and art. So observe here, this is basically an object, and this object has two properties here, which are plain strings. But the third property is actually an array, because hobbies can be multiple of them. We have decided to give it an array here. And within the object, you can add more objects as well. Like let's say you want to get the exam scores here. This will be an object where you're saying the semi-final exam he got 92, and the final he got 100. Okay, so this is how we create an object which has an array as a key and an object also as a key here. This is also possible. So your object can actually contain any type of value, including and not limited to an array as well as an object here. Okay, so now if I have to access the art value from the hobbies array, how do I do it? I basically want to print out this art here. What should be the syntax, guys?
सर क्या पूछे आप?
My question is, I want to console log the art का value यहाँ पर. Like the console log art. I should access this art from this
So
object.
student hobbies, then the index number 1.
So student, and then
hobbies.
Student and then hobbies. Then
index number 1.
Index 1. Perfect. So we get art here. And similarly, if I want to access music, I just do 0 here. Get music here. And if I want to access the final score, how do I do it? If I want to access the final score, guys, what is the answer for that?
Student, exam scores, then final.
That's it. So you are accessing student dot exam scores and then dot final. You get back this result. And if you want the semi-final, I can do the same thing, the semi-final here. Okay, that is it.
सर ऑब्जेक्ट के अंदर जो इंडेंटेशन आप मेंटेन कर रहे हैं वो इम्पोर्टेंट है क्या?
It's not important at all. In fact, you can just do this also directly. Okay, this is rule कुछ नहीं है. You can do whatever. You can add more spaces here. You can add more spaces here. You can add more space here also. Everything will work. Okay, there's no problem here. Like it doesn't look that good, right? Like when other developers will see your code, this is not easy to read, but this is easy to read. Right? So it's always like nice to maintain the spaces and indentation, but not necessary. In Python, mein indentation is mandatory, right? Like in JavaScript, mein aisa nahi hai.
Okay, sir.
Okay, yeah. So any questions so far, guys?
No.
Okay, no questions. Okay, so yeah. So here we discussed about an object containing multiple things, right? But one more very, very common pattern is an array of objects. Now this is very, very, very important because like let's say you go to Flipkart again. let's add certain items to our carts. Let's add this thing. Add to cart. Okay, we have 3 items in the cart, right? Okay, so we have this Milden men's solid thing. We have a shirt, we have a watch, and we have one more T-shirt here. So let's say I create okay, now to represent each one of the items here, I'll create objects for them. Okay, so let's say that I create an object. First object would be this thing. So I'll say the first shirt one will be an object, and will basically have an ID of whatever, or this will be a product ID, and cost will be 2295, and quantity will be this thing here, which is 5. Okay, this is one object. The second object is, well, let's just make it item 1, with the first item in the shopping cart. Second will be item 2, one more object, which basically has again the product ID would be like this, and the cost and quantity will differ. The cost will be 59,700. 59,700 is the cost, and the quantity will be 1. If I do the same thing for the third item, which is this item here, this will be item 3, and let's give it some ID, and the cost will be 297. Quantity will be, let's say 2. This is 2 here. Those are 3 different items, right? But if I want to basically have a list of all the items, I can basically just store all of them within an array. So I can just do const shopping cart or items is equal to an array which has these 3 items in it. So item 1, comma, item 2, comma, item 3. What we have here is we have an array of objects. Okay, basically we're maintaining an array because we want to know, we want to store all the items within a list. And every item is an object here because we need to represent the object or the item properly with the product ID, cost, and quantity, and all of that. Okay, this is also very, very common, especially when trying to build a list of anything. Like even if I go to Flipkart and let's say I go to mobiles, let's select maybe I'll say Realme. You see, even this is also list of all items. You can imagine this list to basically be an array where this is one object, this is one object, this is an object, and all the objects will have kind of the same properties, right? Every object will have an image, it will have a name, it will have rating, it will have the cost, it will have all of these things. Okay, so basically array of objects is a very common thing which everybody uses in every single website. Okay, on this I can even change this by directly giving the objects here like this. I'll just do this here, and item 2 will be this, and item 3 will be this, and I'll remove all the 3 items from here. What we have here is, again, we have an array to the top level, and we have multiple items within the object. We have multiple objects within the array. Okay. So any questions here, guys?
No, sir.
Okay, cool. Now, last thing I want to talk before we end this topic of objects is equality of arrays and objects. Let's say I have an array. Array 1 is equal to 1, 2, 3. Next is array 2, also 1, 2, 3. Now, actually, we discussed about this a little while ago, but we'll just revisit now. So let's say if array 1 double equal to array 2, or if I do array 1 triple equal to array 2, what is the answer for both of these things, guys?
Sir, true.
You're saying it will be true for both?
Yeah, yes.
No, sir.
Rajinder, what is your answer? Sorry.
Sir, one is true and another is false.
Well, let's look at the answer. It's false for both the cases. The reason being, if you remember, I told you guys one thing. So whenever you create, let's say a string, like let's say a name or something, or whenever you create a Boolean, let's actually call it string, or a Boolean, which is basically be a true value, or if you create any other primitive values, the variable will directly hold the value itself. Okay, if you're creating a primitive value, the value will be directly stored inside the variable. That is clear, right? But whenever you create an array or an object, the variable itself does not hold the actual value. It only holds the address of that actual value, which means the string and the Boolean variables actually hold the value itself. Okay, I'll give an example. I'll comment this out. I will comment this out. Now let's say okay, I have const string 2 is equal to also Aditya. Okay. Now when you do a console.log of string double equal to string 2, so I get a value of true here because this variable directly holds this value and this variable directly holds this value. And when we're comparing these both, we're comparing these both things directly, which means basically we're comparing this. Because both of them are equal, we get back value of true. And the same thing actually applies if the two variables are any primitive values, which means they can either be a string, Boolean, undefined null, number, all of these things. But when you have an array or an object, okay, when you have an array or an object, the variable does not actually store the actual value. It only stores the address, and that address will store the actual value, which means when you're trying to compare these both, right, you are not comparing the actual values, you are comparing the references or their addresses or memory locations. Okay, that's what we call referential type checking or referential equality. Okay, whenever you have a comparison that's being done between two arrays or two objects, you are comparing them referentially, which means you are not comparing their actual values, but you're comparing their addresses. Okay, this will have a different address. Maybe the address for this will be something like this, and this will have some other address again, maybe like this. These both are not the same, and hence both of these will be false. Let's say we create two objects. Object 1 will actually be ID 1, and object 2 will also be ID 1. This also, like I told, if you do object 1 double equal to object 2, or if you do triple equal to object 2, we get false in both the cases. Because, like I said, whenever you store an object or an array within a variable, the variable does not hold the actual value. The variable only holds the address or the reference of that actual value. Which means when we're comparing these both, we're comparing them referentially. You're only comparing the references, their addresses, their memories, but not the actual value. That is why the value is always false. Which means you cannot rely on double equal to or triple equal to compare two arrays or objects. Any questions here, guys?
सर ट्रिपल
हाँ
सर ट्रिपल इक्वल टू जो है वो तो टाइप भी चेक करता है, कंपेयर करता है टाइप.
करेक्ट.
तो एड्रेस का भी टाइप होता है क्या?
एड्रेस का भी टाइप हो सकता है, but ultimately the type, the actual address will be different now.
Okay.
Also, see, if you remember, guys, one of the first things I told you was, see, both double equal and triple equal will check for types. The only difference is double equal to will do a type conversion before comparing it. if the types are not same, double equal to will perform a type conversion. Again, triple equal does not perform any type conversion. There's only difference between them both. Okay. Don't say that double equal to will check for only values. That is not correct. The reality is double equal to will check for types as well, just like triple equal to. The only difference is double equal to will perform a type conversion before converting them if the types are not the same.
Okay.
Yeah. Rajendra, you had a question, no? You're asking something?
सर सेम क्वेश्चन पूछना था. Okay.
हाँ भाई. So just remember that, see, double equal to triple equal to क्या करता है ना? When you're giving it two references, वो reference को check करता है. So if references are not the same, it just gives you back a value of false. But let's say, yeah, if I create like const array is equal to 1, 2, 3, and I do const copy is equal to array. Now, if I compare array double equal to copy, or if I do array triple equal to copy, it doesn't matter. Both will be the same answer. What do you guys think will be the answer will be?
Sir, true answer आएगा.
The answer will be true this time because, see again, when you're assigning an array to a variable, the reference will be assigned, which means here maybe the reference is like this. We are passing the same reference here, which means both the copy and the array have the same reference now, which is this one. And that's why the value is like, we get back true value here. Okay. All right.
Sir, sir, can we print the address?
Address, I'm not quite sure how to print it. I used to know a very old way of doing it, but I don't want to talk about it now. So I'll tell that in the next class, okay? But good question, Arvind. Even I didn't know honestly what to do with that, but I'll tell you tomorrow for sure. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So we're done with objects. We'll go with the next topic. But let me just look at my notes. What I have next to talk about. Objects के बारे में हो गया है. We have loops to talk about next. Yeah, so in Python, guys, have you finished working with loops, like the for loop and while loop and all?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So basically the same thing in JavaScript as well. But the biggest difference in JavaScript and Python is, in Python, I think we have only maybe 1 or 2 loops, right? In terms of the for loop, right? But in JavaScript, we have multiple for loops. We actually have a total of 4 for loops. And we have while loop also on top of that. Okay. So we start talking about for loop. First of all, let's talk about why do we even need loops in the first place? Okay. So can anybody tell me why do we need loops in the first? What is the use of loops?
Sir, loops, sir, short the code. We can short the
code.
Yes.
You can't short the code using loops. I think you mean something. I think you're trying to say that if there is some code that you want to repeat multiple times, then we can use loops, right?
Yes, sir.
That is the advantage of loops. Basically, if you have some code which you need to like run over multiple times, maybe you want to change the parameter every single time, that's when you use the loops here. Let me give you an example of what we can use loops for. Let's say you want to print hello world like 10 times, or if there's an array and you want to loop through the array and get the sum of all the numbers within the array, you can even use loops there also. Okay. Now there are multiple loops basically in JavaScript, like I told you. There are for loops. There is a while loop. The for loop itself is there are some 4 types of for loops, by the way. Okay, we'll talk about all of them now. So first, let's talk about the most common and the most common for loop in programming language ever, which exists almost in all programming languages, if I'm not wrong. It is there in C, C++, and Java for sure. Okay, that is the normal, the old form of a for loop. We have a for loop here, and the syntax for that would be you have this thing called for. Within the brackets, first thing will be initial expression, and you follow this up by condition, and then you follow it up by increment expression. Okay, this is the syntax. Let me break this down. Let me break this down like this. Okay, so we have an initial expression here. That is the first thing that you give into the for loop. Next, you have a condition itself, and then you have increment expression. Now, basically what happens is, I'll give you a simplest example to start with. Okay, so let's say I want to just print the numbers from 1 to 10. So I'll start from let I is equal to 0. So I will be, we have declared a variable called I, which starts with 0. Okay, next thing is we give a condition I less than or equal to 10. Now, when we first enter the for loop, what happens is, first we check this value. We're saying, okay, I is equal to 0. Perfect. So we have a variable called I is equal to 0. All right. So right now, the value of I is 0. Then we go to this place. This place, what we're checking is, they're checking if this condition is true or not. Which means only if this condition is true, then you enter the for loop. But we also have one more condition here, which will run after after every looping is done. Okay, so basically what I'm saying here is we have declared a variable called I is equal to 0, which means there is a variable called I which starts at 0. And then you come and you check this condition here. And you're saying I less than or equal to 10, which means as long as this condition is true, you will keep entering the loop again and again. Okay, I'll just do a console.log of I here. We get 0 to 10. If you change this to 1, we get 1 to 10. Basically, so let me tell you what happens here, all right? So we have a for loop. Now, inside the for loop, we are declaring a variable called I is equal to 1. And I mean, when we are entering the for loop for the first time, only then we check this value. Okay, this thing will run. We check this value only once. And that too when we initially enter the for loop. Okay, now we have entered the for loop. We have checked that I is equal to 1. And then we go to this condition. And only if this condition is true, then you enter here. Okay, which means you start from here, you check this condition, and then you enter this block here. Because I is less than or equal to 10, which means this condition is true, then you execute this value. Once everything inside this block is done, then you go and you run this one, which means you increment the value here. Which means the I was initially 1, I will now become 2 here. And after this thing is done, you come back here again. You do not go back here, you only come back here. This time I value is 2. 2 is less than or equal to 10, that is true, which means you'll enter this block again. You run all the code within this block. Once this block execution is done, you come back here. You increment the value. You check the condition. You enter here. This block is done. You increment the value. You check this condition. You enter the block. The block is done again. Same way that it keeps repeating. Now, to make it even more clear, I'll try to add this on a drawing here. Oh, yeah. So we have this thing here, right? So what happens is initially we check this only once. This part we will check only once, only the first time. Only first time. After this, what happens is we check this condition, we enter the loop, and we keep coming back with this. This will be the order, which means we check the condition, we finish the execution within this block and we increment it. Once increment is done, again you come back here, again this will be run. Come back inside the loop, you come back into the block here. The block is finished, then increment it. The for loop will stop only once the condition is false. And so that we'll just go with a very small number. First, we'll say 1, we'll say 2 here. This time we go to 1 and 2. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, in the first iteration, I'll write down the iterations here. So I'll say iterations. Yeah, iterations. So in the first iteration, what happens? The IK value is 1. And we're checking if 1 less than or equal to 2. Because this thing is true, we console log this one. We get 1 here, which is fine. Now, after this thing is done, after console log of 1 is printed, we go ahead and we increment it, which means in the second iteration, the IK value is now 2. We check if 2 less than or equal to 2. 2 less than or equal to 2, which means this is also true. This thing is true. And hence we get back inside this block again. We console log of 2. Now again, we come back here. This time, third iteration, what happens? The I++, which means 2 becomes 3. This time, is this condition true? It's not, because 3 is not less than or equal to 2. And hence we do not enter this block anymore. We exit out of the for loop. Okay, so let's repeat it one last time. When we have a for loop, we, in the first iteration or in the first loop, we execute this value and we set a value of 1 to I, and then we check the condition. We enter the block. Once the block execution is done, we increment the value, we check the condition, and only if the condition is true, then we enter the block again. Again, once the block execution is done, we come back here, we increment, we check the condition. If the condition is true, then we come back here. That's how the for loop works.
Sir,
Rajendra, tell me.
sir, if I use ++I instead of I++, then
One second, sorry. Yeah, there'll be no difference with respect to the for loop. Because anyway, by the time we come here, the IK value would have been incremented. So no difference between ++ and I++, but it's recommended as a standard to always use I++. Because that's the standard, right? I mean, that's what you see all the manuals, all the people in big code bases using, they'll use I++ only. So there's technically no difference between ++I and I++, but just use I++ as a standard.
okay, sir.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
सर आई का जो वैल्यू है वो हम फॉर लूप के बाहर इनिशियलाइज कर सकते हैं क्या?
We can. So let's say I want to do let I is equal to 1, and we can just do I. So let's say I, and let's do like this. This you can do.
Okay.
This also work, but again, like I said, this is not something we this doesn't look like a standard again. Always do this. See, I talk a lot about standard because once you start working in a big company, right? Like big company or nice company, you'll see people following certain procedures or standards, and it's good to stick with that. So always follow this example like this, like declare let here only and do I++, not ++I. Okay. Any more questions, guys?
No, sir.
All right. Now I want to give you guys a simple challenge. I want you guys to print out values from 50 to 0. So it should be 50, and then should be 40, 30, 20, 10, and 0. By the way, so this doesn't have to be increment. This can be decrement also. So it can be increment or decrement expression. which means I'll give you an example. So let's say for let I is equal to 10, so as long as I is greater than 0, keep running it, and I'll say I minus minus. So I'll do console.log of I. My screen is very slow for some reason. So I get back 10 to 1. What I'm doing here is I'm starting with I is equal to 0. So the I value will be 0 initially. Then I check this condition. Then I'm saying I is greater than 0, which is true. We run this block of code. Once this block of code is done, we decrement it. It means I value will now become 9. And then we check this condition again. 9 greater than 0. It is a true value. And hence you enter this block of code again. Once the execution of this block of code is done, you decrement it again. Again, check the condition, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now I want you guys to basically print out these values: 50, 40, 30, 10, 20, 10, and 0. So I'll give you time till like 10 o'clock. Okay. Let me know once done. Rajendra is given this answer. I'll tell you what answer is given. So basically it's saying for let I is equal to 0. So I equal to 50, I greater than 0, and I minus 10. And you're saying let's do a console log of I. Let's see what the answer is. See, it's actually going into infinite loop, but so I'll stop it right here. And my screen, so it's actually killing multiple number of times. My screen just flows. So a couple of mistakes here. The first mistake is this thing. Okay, so you have to always assign a value. So I plus plus is what? I plus plus is I is equal to I plus 1, right? That's what I plus plus means. So here what you should do, you should say I is equal to I minus 10. Either do this or just do directly I minus is equal to 10. Okay. This time if we run our app, let's run the app this time. Okay, we get the correct answer. But even now we are missing something. We're not getting the value of 0. I want 0 also.
Sir, I is less than equal to.
Less than equal to 9.
Greater than equal to.
Because we want to include 0 also, no? So we get 50 to 0.
Why I don't use I minus 10?
No, so see, यहाँ पर जो भी कर रहे हो ना, that will be the new value of I. यहाँ पर whatever you do, there should be a new value. But see, if you're doing I minus 10, I'll tell you. For doing I minus 10, here you're not assigning that I minus 10 value to I again. तुम सिर्फ एक value यहाँ पर कर रहे हो, but the I value is never changing now. This thing, whatever you're doing here, you're supposed to change the value of I. Either decrement it or increment it. Now, basically, when I do I plus plus, it basically means I is equal to I plus 1, which means I'm changing the value of I here, right? Same with I minus minus also. Like this. So either do I plus is equal, minus is equal to 10, or do I is equal to I minus 10? Because remember, ultimately your I ka value must actually change, but yahan par your I ka value is not changing, which means in every iteration the value will remain the same. But what we want, I want to change the value of I here. That's why I'll say I is equal to I minus 10, which means abhi I ka value change hoga. I will become as 40. Once this is 40, we check the condition this time, and then we print it. And then we come back here, and then we decrease the value of I again.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, no problem. That is one more thing. Okay, now let's talk about the for loops and arrays. How can we use the for loops over arrays? Okay, so let's say we have an animals array. The animals will be lions and tigers and bears. Here we have these three arrays. Now, if I want to loop over this array, I can use the for loop also. No, see, I know that I have to loop from the index 0. Basically, what I need to do, I need to create a variable within the for loop, which will keep a track of all the indexes here. Like index will start from 0, 1, and it should end at 2. Basically, my I variable must start from the 0th index, which is this thing, and it should end at the last index. So I should basically, my condition should be what? Condition should be I less than animals dot length. So animals dot length. Okay, what is animals dot length? The length is 3, right? But I should be less than 3, or it should be less. Or if you want to include the equal to here, this should be minus 1. Okay, this is make it. Understand, there should be I plus plus here. So if I do a console.log of this I for starting, we get 0, 1. Forgot to remove this, sorry. We get 0, 1, 2. These are the indexes of this array. Okay. I'll repeat what I've done here. See, I'm starting I with 0. And this I will basically be the index of each one of this. So I can change this to index of, let's change it to index. Let index and index and index here. So I'm saying that I'll create a, this should be index also, sorry. So I'm saying that I've created, the index will start from 0, it starts from here. Index must be less than 0, 1, 2. So it should be less than 3, right? Index should be less than 3. Because the last index can only be 0, 1, 2. The last index must always be 2. But the length is what? Length of array is 3. And hence, because we want to stop at 2, we're giving this condition that index less than animals dot length, which means this index must be less than the length of the array. And then index plus plus, because we are doing index plus plus here because we want to increment the value from 0 to 0, 1, and 2. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, if I want to print out the array ka values here, I can just do array of index. I'll get back all, sorry. We get back the values here. Okay. So I'll give you one more example again very quickly. Let's just const IDs is equal to 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500. So if I want to loop over them and print out the values, again, very simple. For let I is equal to 0, I less than IDs dot length, I plus plus. Let me change the I to index to make it more descriptive. And if I just do a console.log IDs of index, so I get back these values. Now, one question I have for you here is, if we go back to the previous example, if I want to print out the same value in the reverse order, how do I do? How do I print out the same thing in the reverse order?
Sir, initialize with 3 or 2.
Initialize with 3.
No,
with
sir.
2,
0, 1, 2, 2.
0, 1. Okay, but I don't want to give a hard-coded value here. No, I mean, it should depend on this animals thing. So how do I give the index value based on this array?
Okay, so the length, animals dot length.
But animals of length will be 3 now again.
-1.
Perfect. What about this?
Index is greater
0.
than
Index is
animal length.
It will be greater than animal. So it should just be greater than or equal to 0. No?
Yes, and index minus minus.
That's it. Animals. Sorry. We get the reverse order now. That's it. Okay, this is how the for loops work. One more very common thing to do is to make nested for loops. Okay, so let's say I have 2 arrays.
Sir,
Arrays.
sir,
tell
can
me,
we reverse the array string array?
I didn't get you.
Yes, sir. Sir, थोड़ा सा इसको और पीछे जाइए, बैक जाइए थोड़ा सा
और थोड़ा बैक. Okay.
सिंपल एरे प्रिंट कीजिए. जी सर.
सिंपल एरे मतलब यही है ना?
जी सर. सर अभी जैसे हमारा ये आ गया, इंडेक्स 0 आ गया. सर अगर मैंने एक इसी लाइन में इसको रिवर्स करना हो, तो एरे को रिवर्स करना हो, मतलब मेरे को ये जैसे अभी ये प्रिंट हो रहा है 0.
तो आपको ऐड, so you want to create a new array now with the reversed values?
Yes sir.
So basically you want to create a new array which have reversed values, right?
नहीं सर, इसी को रिवर्स करना है, इसी को सेम array.
So इसी को reverse, that will be a little complicated, but I'll tell you a simple thing to do. Okay, so let's say you want to create a new array which will be like reverse animals. Okay, see, first of all, there are 2 ways. If you want to reverse animals, there is a method called reverse, which we already spoke about. Last class we spoke about this thing called animals.reverse. And if you do a console.log of this, we get back the reversed value here already. But there's one more way. Okay, and this will actually one second, this will actually do the animals only. Yeah, when you do reverse now like this, basically this will reverse the actual array itself. If whatever you're asking, that's already happening with this method. Okay, now one more thing you can do is, what if the question is, if you want to create a copy of animals, if you want to create a reverse animals array, but not using the reverse method. Okay, in that case, what I can do is I can start, index will start from animals.length -1. And index will be greater than or equal to 0. This minus. And here, what do I do, guys? I have to populate this array with the reversed animals. What do I do here?
Console.
How do I keep appending?
Console.log.
No, I'm saying कि अभी मुझे, say when I do this, when I do animals of index, अब मुझे values आएंगे ना, मुझे जो भी values आएंगे, मुझे इन values को इस array में store करना है. How do I do that? It's very simple, guys. So I have to just do reverse animals dot push of the animals of index. And if I just do a console.log of reverse animals now, I get back the animals in reverse. This will give me the reversed value. So this specific thing will give me back either bears or tigers or lions. I'm pushing it to reverse animals. That's it. Any confusion here?
Sir, if I use pop, then what happen? Pop sir bahar nikalega na usko.
Pop will remove it, na.
Oh.
But pop you cannot
But
pass
अभी
a
तो
value. Pop will
सर
just
अभी
remove
तो
it.
पॉप नहीं होगा ना, अभी तो है ही नहीं लिस्ट में.
Exactly. And if it आपको याद है मैंने बताया था कि if you try to pop from an empty array also, JavaScript error तो नहीं देगा, लेकिन वो कुछ भी नहीं करेगा. Like let's say कि I have an empty array like this, const empty array, like this. So if I try to do empty array.pop, I'll get no error. लेकिन कुछ होगा भी नहीं. ठीक है?
सर अभी हमारे जो रिवर्स एनिमल्स है, रिवर्स एनिमल्स में जो हमारी वैल्यू है इस समय वो है लाइन, टाइगर एंड बियर. सर वो रिवर्स में है, वो पुश उसमें है. सर अगर मैंने अगर मैं पॉप एक को पॉप करूं तो मैं कैसे करूंगा? इंडेक्स वैल्यू डालूंगा उसमें, जैसे मैंने लिखा रिवर्स एनिमल डॉट पुश एनिमल्स इंडेक्स, पॉप एनिमल इंडेक्स की वैल्यू अगर मैं 0 रखूं तो 0 पॉप हो जाएगा.
नहीं. So first of all, what does the pop do? तो pop जो है ना, वो pop वो सीधे जो भी array है, array में last item जो भी वो उसको निकाल देगा बस. You cannot give any argument to pop कि ये निकालो बोल के, वो नहीं होगा. That's not possible. What I'm trying to say is, if I just do ये pop करूंगा ना, वो क्या होगा by default क्या होगा? Last में जो भी item है वो उसको निकाल देगा बस. So if I just try to do a console log of animals now, just see what happens. Last में जो bears है उसको निकाल दिया उसने.
Okay sir. Thank you sir.
If I do it again, what happens? What will be the animals का value now?
Line.
But what is the method that we can use to remove a specific item based on the index? मैंने बताया था आपको array methods की class में. वो शायद last class था शायद. Does anybody remember what method it was to remove an item based on the index?
Index of.
No. Index of सिर्फ आपको index देगा बस. मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ कि say I want to remove the second index from this array. How do I do that? मुझे tigers को निकालना है इसके. So इसलिए I'm telling guys, after my classes, go home and prepare. Otherwise you'll forget stuff. And programming is all about practice. Okay. The answer is you have a method called splice. Okay. Splice क्या करता है? You give a start index, which means you want to start at this thing. So 0, 1. 1 is start index. You remove one item. That's it. You console log of animals now. Lions and bears. What is saying here is just saying कि index 1 में जो भी है वहां से एक आइटम निकालो बस. What if you want to remove the last item and replace it with something else? Like if I want to replace this bears with maybe cheetah, so I will do 0, 1, 2. So second index पे remove one item and replace it with cheetah. We get like this. Now, what if I don't want to remove the item at the index 1? I mean, at index 2, but just add this thing here. So I'll just do this 0. What this means is index 2 pe, don't remove anything, but just add this thing. I can add multiple things if you want to. Cheetah, and then water leopard, cat. So all of them will be added as index 2. So splice is used for that. One more question to you guys is, what if you want to get back the first two animals from this array? How do I get back that? What is the method I can use to get back just the first 2 elements within this array?
So slice करना होगा.
So to animals, or slice, start from 0, and I want to end it at 0, 1, 2. So जब मैं 2 डालता हूँ ना, वो not including 2 है, which means it will stop at 1. So if I just do a console.log of first 2, you get the first 2 here. Okay. Any
Yes.
questions on this one, guys?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, I will just go ahead with one last thing, which is nested for loop. Let's say we have 2 arrays. Array 1 will be 1, 2, 3, and array 2 will be 4, 5, 6. What we can do is we can do for let I is equal to 0, I less than the array 1 dot length, I plus plus. I'm looping over this array, and I will also loop over this array. So I'll be like for let j is equal to 0, j less than array 2 dot length, and I plus plus. This will be j plus plus, so this will be j. And now if I do a console.log of I, actually I'll do this. I would be I, and j would be j. Like this. So get back these values here. Now let's see what's happening. Okay. So first we'll start from this this for loop. The value of I is 0, and we check this condition. 0 less than array of length, which means it's true. And then we enter this for loop. I mean, enter this block. Okay. Inside this block again, we enter this for loop. Inside the for loop, we have j. J will start from 0 and less than the array of length, which means condition is true. And hence we enter this thing. And we know that I ka value is initially 0. 0 aayega yahan par. J ka value is 0, we get 0 here. Now we are inside this for loop at the moment. Once this block of execution is done, we increment the j value here, which means j becomes 1. We check this condition, which is true. We enter this block again. No, inside this block, I is still 0, but j is 1. And hence we get this. Okay? Now,
Yes,
same
sir.
thing, we increment the value of j plus plus. J will become 2 here, and this condition is still true. And we enter this block, and I k value is still 0 because we have not exited this for loop yet. So j will become 2. You get this value here. Then ultimately, this becomes 3, and this condition is false. And hence we exit this for loop, which means this thing is done. And hence then we increment this value. Abhi I 0 tha pehle, I will become 1. This condition is true. And again, we enter this block, which means we enter this for loop again. And same thing repeats. Okay. Just try this code out in your console once, try to understand what's happening, and we'll meet tomorrow again. Okay. So any more questions before I close session, guys?
नो सर।
Okay. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you tomorrow then. Bye bye.